Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You really deserve it. Let's watch.
Muy enojada. No puedo creer que se haya casado con Cory.
Traicionada. 1 año mintiéndonos. En la cara. Sí.
¿Cómo vas a haberte casado con Cory? Porque no se podía quedar en el país. Se hubiera largado, pues.
All right, so Evelin is telling her cousins, sisters, family members, friends that they got married, Cory and Evelin, a while back, and that they're now doing a ceremony for family and friends. And the family members are upset and really angry and feel betrayed. Okay, I don't know their relationship with Evelin, but if you had a really close family member or friend who got married behind the scenes and didn't tell you, especially if you hold a lot of weight on marriages, which some people do, some people don't, then you could feel hurt. You could be like, hey, you didn't tell me. You could have told me. You could have said, hey, by the way, don't tell anyone, we got married a while back. So, you're entitled to feeling hurt about being excluded in that way, for sure. How do you communicate about that? And then for Evelin, she is saying, well, it was a matter of pragmatics. It was a pragmatic thing because if we didn't get married, he would have to have left the country. And, we didn't want that to happen. So we just got married. That makes total sense as well. And so both sides are fine. How do you communicate about it? How do you empathize with the other side? So from the family member's point of view, you could be like, oh, okay, well, I feel betrayed, but it's not really about me. She was in a tough spot. And, maybe I say, you could have told me and it hurts my feelings you didn't tell me, but I understand why you didn't, like you could allow for that. And then if you're Evelin, you could say something like, look, I understand that you feel hurt that I didn't tell you. It makes total sense, but I just didn't because I just felt afraid that everyone's going to judge me. It's probably reasons why she didn't tell people. Or I wanted to have a dream wedding at some point, and I didn't want people to think like that was the wedding. It was just a formality thing, and I don't know. I just didn't really want to tell anyone. Or we didn't want to tell Cory's family. There's probably reasons why they kept it secret. So, but you can have empathy for each other. Let's see if they haven't conveyed it yet. Let's see what they do here.
I don't think I was ready to marry Cory, but Cory's visa was expiring, and we were in a good time of our relationship. With no other way for him to stay here in the country with me, I agreed to marry him.
All right, so this is consistent with Evelin's stance from the beginning about marriage. She is saying, I didn't really want to marry him, but he would have to leave the country if I didn't marry him, so I agreed to marry him. It's not a great, beginning. Particularly, I think Cory would have liked it to have been different. We can even see the body language here. It perfectly sums up at least what we've seen on this show about how she is extremely ambivalent, which is fine. She can be ambivalent about wanting to marry him. And he is very not ambivalent, very much wants to marry her and has from the beginning. But how do they talk about it? And this is, this happens sometimes. There are couples who will really, day to day like spending time with each other and want to be exclusive and don't want to break up. But one person is definitely wanting to get married and have kids and do that whole thing. The other person is like, no, not for me. And the Corys of the world are like, well, I want to get married, I want to have kids, and in order for me to get that, I have to leave Evelin. But I love Evelin and I want to be with her, and I don't have any reason to break up with her today, so maybe I'll break up with her later on, or maybe I'll convince her, or she'll come around. But I am 100%, I want to get married, I want to have kids. So it's a dilemma. And it's easier for us on the outside to be like, well, just break up with her, find someone else. That's much easier for us to say and harder to be in that situation. And for the Evelins of the world, they're like, well, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to get married. But I love Cory and I like to be with him. And I don't have any reason to break up with him right now. And as long as he is okay with my stance that I don't want to get married, I don't want to have kids, then there's not a huge reason to break up with him. I mean, I know he really wants to get married and have kids, but he's willing to put up with this. And if one day he breaks up with me because it's a deal breaker to him, then, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I like where we're at right now, and you know, I've got a lot of years ahead of me. So, you know, we can see that now from the outside. When we watch it, it looks frustrating, I'm guessing, because I see comments that, you know, why does Corey, why does he put up with this? He's people use these words online that are not pleasant for people, usually men, always men actually in Corey's position. And they will judge Evelin and stuff. And so, you know, I it's frustrating to watch ambiguity. We want there to be an answer. We want there to be order. And when there's messiness, it upsets us. And I get that.
It was mostly a last-minute decision. And after Corey and I got married, I got all these mixed emotions, like, what did I do? Like, did I thought this through? And I just got really emotional and started crying.
Okay, yeah. Given what we've seen, if I were Evelin's friend, I would say, whoa, pump the brakes here. From the beginning, you have said explicitly you don't want to get married to anyone, let alone to Corey. So I know you don't want him to be kicked out of the country because of the visa, but let's think about the bigger picture here. Maybe this is a good thing. Maybe, who knows? But maybe this is like a good thing for the two of you. He might need to actually move on with his life. You know, what's the bigger picture here? And I'm not surprised that she cried and she was panicking after they got married. And you just have to wonder, why did she do that? And is she not self-aware? Does her motivation to marry him fluctuate over time? Was he very persistent? Was it during the pandemic when a lot of us were kind of panic relationshiping? You know, there was a whole thing that I heard about where people on Tinder in like March or April of 2020 were, you know, not looking to date people, but looking for immediate long-term partners during the lockdown. It was like lockdown partner or something. And people were like, hey, you want to be my lockdown? I don't know you that well, but I'm desperate. I live alone, or you live alone. How about we be, you know, lockdown partners? Maybe that's what happened. I don't know.
Did anybody know about your secret wedding?
I told no one about this wedding. No one. And I also asked Corey to not tell anyone as well. Lo siento por no decirle antes, pero no quería decirlo todavía.
All right, so there's some of that empathy. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier, but I didn't want to tell anyone. And there could be a little bit more there, I'm guessing. And let's see if their family member, cousins, sisters, that they could say, okay, you know, I see that, and it was a tough spot that you were in. I mean, you could judge a little bit, like, well, why did you marry him when you didn't want to? I mean, so, but you want to withhold that usually during times like this. Or I don't know, maybe you could communicate that in a nice way. Let's see what they say.
Nos enoja que se casara y no nos dijera. Y me enoja también que como hermana debes decir si te equivocas y tratar de ayudar. No nos permitió ayudar.
All right, so that's what I was thinking, is that they're sisters. So as a sister, we feel hurt that we could have helped and she didn't reach out to us. So that's fine. That's good. You want to have family members who are saying, look, I'm here for you and I'm available. And by the way, if you don't confide in me, I'm going to feel hurt because I confide in, I want our relationship. Yeah, it's like being in a marriage, for example, and your spouse gets diagnosed with some scary health problem, and they confide in other people, but not you as the spouse. That's going to hurt your feelings. And although it's not your problem that someone else has a cancer scare, but it is defining, it does send a message about the relationship. And, you know, the sisters are entitled to, how do you communicate about that? Do you have any kind of empathy to the situation? Let's see.
Tengamos un espacio.
O sea, me dices que tenían un espacio, pero están casados. ya estabas casada cuando se metió con esta tal Jenny.
Sí. Pero yo le pedí por el espacio, pero sí, estábamos legalmente casados.
All right, it does add a wrinkle to Corey. Does it add a wrinkle? It adds a slight wrinkle that Corey was still married when he was getting together with this other woman in Peru. But as we've seen before, both Evelin and particularly Corey has stated that they were broken up, that the relationship was over. And, for some people, they're like, well, until we're legally divorced, then we're still together. Other people will say, and, the legality of our relationship has nothing to do with the reality of our relationship. And I think the two of them were on that category. So, again, it's important that, as I've been saying in the beginning, that because Evelin also got together with someone while they were on a break, that you define these things, that you say, okay, we're done. You have this big blow up and you slam doors or whatever, maybe. And then the next day you got to think, okay, what is our relationship right now? Can we date other people? And you got to have that conversation. It's not a comfortable one to have, but it's important because you don't want to do something that would be harmful to another person, even if you are broken up.
Y aún así te
Y
quieres
ahora
volver a
te quieres
casar.
volver a casar.
Esperando que se ponga mejor.
Esperando que se ponga mejor.
Y te vas a pasar esperando toda la vida, porque Corey no va a cambiar.
So the sisters are being sarcastic. I don't see any empathy there. I don't understand their of course, their approach should be expected given what typically people do, but it just lacks any kind of understanding for the situation, or really understanding for the fact that you don't really know what their relationship is like, and you don't really know Evelin's heart. And this is what I find that these sisters are exhibiting a lot of the reactivity that I see online, which is just this exasperation of like, you just forget it, you just break up. And it ignores the reality that human beings have hearts. We understand that we fall in love with people that aren't necessarily fantastic for us, or we have complicated needs and they don't always match up with other people. So it's interesting to see I don't know if it's the typical audience, but a section of the audience of this show represented in how the sisters are reacting.
Parece que está casándose por compromiso y no por amor.
Va a ser como una cárcel para ella.
Yeah, I actually agree with their take. I don't know if I'd word it that way, but because Evelin has said as much, that she doesn't really want to marry him. And so she didn't want to marry him. She's repeated that. And then they got married because he was going to get kicked out of the country. And then while they were married, soon after, they broke up and basically were going to get divorced. He goes somewhere else, has another relationship with someone. He comes back. Now they're back together. If you are Evelin's sister, yeah, you're going to wonder if this is the best choice to get married again. Absolutely. All right, well, that does it for that episode. If you want to become a patron of the podcast, that's how we know you like what we're doing when you become a patron. Most people say subscribe, hit the bell. You can do that. That's fine. But if you become a patron of the podcast, now that is super cool of you. There should be a link below. You can also just go to patreon.com. You can also download the app to your phone. And when you become a patron, one of the best things about being a patron that people will say about being a patron of the podcast is you get access to our best episodes, our best audio episodes. And I've been doing patron-only episodes for 6 years. And so I have a whole catalog of really our best, whenever I spend a few months prepping for an episode, I usually make it a patron-only episode because it's very technical and this sort of thing. And so if the YouTube channel has piqued your interest on certain psychological concepts, relational concepts, the deep dives that I do for patrons only are definitely going to provide a lot more information. But anyway, everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.